Welcome back to Sim Sunday and a very happy new year from myself, the Sunday Pilot, in what will be my first flight of 2022 on the channel. And as you can see in the title, I'm on board the PMDG 737-800NGXu at Oslo Gardermoen International Airport, ENGN. And as we continue what I'm simply calling our Remote Routes mini-series, today I'll be flying from here in Oslo to what I believe is possibly the most northerly commercial airport in the world. And of course that being Longyearbyen in Svalbard, which are a group of Norwegian islands well into the Arctic Circle. But before I get into this flight, my first flight of 2022, I want to give you a little bit of a channel update. On the last video we published, the first in our Remote Routes series, the real Airbus pilot flew the Comair 737 from Zeebo from Johannesburg to St Helena, a remote British overseas territory island in the South Atlantic Ocean. I would love to have tried to recreate this flight myself and prepared 3D version 4.5 using the feel there Embraer ERJ190 in the livery of South African Airlines Airlink, which of course is the airline currently flying this route in the real world from both Johannesburg and Cape Town. But sadly, St Helena is simply an airport unavailable in prepared 3D that I can find, so there will be no flight to St Helena for me in prepared. But moving on to the real Airbus pilot, aviation's version of Stig, or so he tells me. With restrictions in the pandemic lifting, he is back flying. In fact, over the last few months we have been chatting. He's been in places like Hong Kong, Japan, the United States, and all over the Far East and Europe. And while that's great news for aviation Stig, it's not so great news for this channel, because the real Airbus pilot is simply unable. He does not have time to create content. So for the foreseeable future, folks, I'm afraid you're stuck with me. But as we return to normality after the pandemic, my own business is getting very busy itself. And therefore, I'm struggling myself to dedicate the time to create these flights and edit the video. So in a bid to keep the channel going, we're going to reduce the publication of our videos to one every 2 weeks. By the time we hit mid-2021, the real Airbus pilot and I had already developed a 2022 schedule of real-world flights that we wanted to recreate in Flight Simulator. So I'm proposing to deliver these flights every 2 weeks on the channel throughout the year, which will give the real Airbus pilot the opportunity to slip a video or two in when he's got time to produce them. Because during the latter part of 2021 he had procured an Airbus A310 and A340 for X-Plane, and I would love to see them on the channel at some point. So with the real Airbus pilot safely placing the Zeebo 737-800 on the ground at St Helena in the South Atlantic, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish aviation's version of Stig happy flying throughout 2022. But it is time to get back to the video and prepared version 3D version 4.5 and of course Gardermoen here in Oslo, which today is presented by Aerosoft Professional version 2 for prepared. And you will see a lot more of this scenery as we prepare for this flight into the Arctic Circle. Moving over to Sindbury for preparing to depart here in Oslo from runway 01 left. So that's to the north of Oslo. And as we depart, the SID will be heading north towards Trondheim before heading over the Arctic Sea to the north of Norway and of course Svalbard. The initial cruise would be 34,000 feet, flight level 340, but that was a little bit of a story which I'll come back to once I'm into the flight. And talking about this flight, we'll be taking on quite a bit more fuel than normal, with over 60 minutes of contingency planned, with our alternate being Tromsø. And for the purpose of today's video, I've set the calendar to the 1st of June 2022 and the weather to the 1st of June 2021. After all, I recorded this flight in January 2022, and if I'd been doing this using real world time and weather, it would have been pitch black and there would be nothing to see this far north. So back into Flight Sim, it is time to get this aircraft underway to Svalbard.
Scandinavian 4490 is clear to reports as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain altitude 7,000. Departure frequency is 119.975. Squawk 3155.
Locking gear. Departure check completed. Pipe has been inserted. Release parking brakes. Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at wheel.
Ground, Scandinavian, Port 490 with information, hotel, west taxi, IFR. Taxi, short runway 1 left, using taxiway, Romeo, Lima, Delta, Delta 1, Yankee, Hotel, Golf 1, Golf, Golf, Kilo, November, Golf 1, Scandinavian, Port 490.
As I said previously, the scenery that I'm using here at Oslo is from Aerosoft, and of course it is the Aerosoft Oslo Gardermoen version 2 for prepared 3D version 4 and above. I also have Orbx EU Norway installed, and this makes a massive difference to the scenery around the country of Norway, and I also have Orbx EU scenery for the entire UK, Ireland and Germany north and south these days.
North Shuttle 1740, taxi holding point for runway 1, left, and taxiway Elon 1, November.
I also have a full live subscription to Navigraph, and that means I probably don't need the progressive taxi switched on. With SimBrief being acquired by Navigraph during 2021, I genuinely believe this is now a must-have add-on for anyone flying tube liners in Flight Sim. Anyway, back to today's flight up to Svalbard. It's time to complete a pre-departure checklist, and this includes setting our engine ignition switches to continuous before, of course, switching on our TCAS, our traffic collision avoidance system, and then switching on our weather radar. Our final item on the checklist being our landing lights, which will switch on after we've been in clearance to depart.
Shuttle 1740, cleared for takeoff. Runway 1 left, service. Dr. Moon, departure Scandinavian, board 4900, is climbing through 2,400, board altitude 7,000. Door shuttle bearing 7, bearing clear. Door shuttle 1740, left heading 1995, navigation 5, turn left heading 140, door shuttle.
I had numerous challenges while climbing to our initial cruising altitude of 34,000 feet on this flight north to Svalbard. The first thing to note, we were heavy due to the amount of fuel we were carrying to make the alternate journey back to Tromsø if necessary. And of course, this being the first flight of the day from Oslo, the capital of Norway, up to Svalbard, we were carrying quite a bit of cargo. However, the biggest challenge that I encountered on this flight up to Svalbard this morning was the weather. At times during the first 70 minutes of this flight north, we were pounded by very strong crosswinds of nearly 150 knots. I tried the recommended optimal flight level of 340, but it simply didn't work. So for the first hour of the flight, we settled at around flight level 320. But even then, the crosswinds were averaging around 118 knots. However, the further north we went, the more calm the winds became. During the latter stages of the flight, I did manage to climb to flight level 360, where the winds were less than 30 knots off the nose. With 150 miles to run, the permafrost-covered mountains of Svalbard finally came into view. I was planning an arrival into runway 10 at Longyearbyen, and that is what I was ultimately given by ATC. It was therefore a pretty straightforward approach into runway 10 over the bay. So as you're going to see shortly, I disconnected the autopilot early and hand flew this 737-800 into Longyearbyen, Svalbard. So as you can guess, guys, it was never going to be my best landing ever. But what would you expect from a Sunday pilot? And there you go, guys. Welcome to Svalbard, another less than perfect landing by the Sunday pilot. I was going to say that the scenery here at Svalbard was stock prepared 3D, but it's actually not, because I forgot I've got EU Norway installed from Orbx. So while the quality of the airport scenery here at Svalbard isn't great, it is better than what you would get out of the box in prepared. So as I clean up the aircraft before taxiing onto the stand, it is time to bring another episode of Sim Sunday to a close. And therefore I want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for watching another one of our videos here on YouTube. The next video in our Remote Routes series is going to be a flight on board an Airbus A320 from Santiago down to Mount Pleasant in the Falkland Islands. It's going to be a two-parter, so you know what to do if you want to follow us here on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon. So until then, wherever you're flying in your virtual world, don't forget to fly safe.